here's my frustration when we talk about bowls. I think everybody goes into bowl season, understanding what they are in this day and age. The rosters are in complete flux because of the opt-outs and everything else. The coaching staffs can be in flux too.
Yeah.
Because of guys going to different jobs or guys getting fired or leaving for other schools, XYZ. We all understand it's holiday programming too. Like, it's just, they exist, and ESPN owns a lot of these bowls because they know.
All but like 2.
They know that you're going to watch them because you're stuck at home and you're not really doing anything. I mean, that's what I did this past weekend, right? So we all recognize they're just glorified exhibitions. Then why is it that so many people are mad when their team loses? Now, if you're coming at me from the, like, you know what? I wanted to watch Dave Dorn eat a mascot. Okay, cool. I wanted to see Mac Brown get dumped mayonnaise on him. Okay, I get that. Like, my brother is texting me, pissed, because he was at the Pop-Tarts board in Orlando. Pissed at that game. Why, man? Why? It's almost like you can't have it both ways. That being said, I do think there are some things you can ultimately take away from the various bowl games. Let's start with the Wolves, shall we? Since I'm on the topic of the Pop-Tarts Bowl. NC State is kind of like how I am this time of the year when I look in my closet and I see those old size 34 selvage jeans that I picked. I mean, I spent good money.
Dear Lord.
Exactly.
That's Joe.
Exactly. Exactly. I spent good money. I spent good money on those jeans 10 years ago. And I always think, you know what? I'm gonna get back in those 34s. That's State with the 10th win. I'm gonna do it. This is it. This is our chance. Here we go. It's only happened once in 118 years, which my brother appropriately wore that Gator Bowl sweater that I gave him as a thrift gift a couple years ago back in right?
Yeah.
But that's still just a fun trivia fact. That's still the last time NC State has won, or the only time NC State has won 10 games.
It's been told to me that people who work at NC State really, really, really don't like it when I say this, but it is true.
Yeah.
NC State can't have nice things.
They can't.
And I dedicated the Law of the Wolf podcast with JC Zempel to this entire topic, but it's true. And I've talked about this before from 2018 when Dave Dorn himself said, we can handle when people doubt us. When people tell us we stink, we can handle it. He goes, the second we're happy, though, we can't handle it. We can't handle being happy.
So how's that going to
handle success?
So how's that going to play in the next year?
That's his number one job.
Yeah,
because he has proven now he can scramble with the best of them. He can cockroach with the best of them. But you have to now prove that you can handle some expectations, that you can handle success, that you can handle people talking and saying nice things about you, and not just turning some imaginary slight from Steve Smith on a different channel while you're on the CW. Like, yeah, watching our year in review, I completely forgot that he had called out Steve Smith while he was on the CW, and Steve Smith was on ESPN like hours before. Yeah. Like, what are we like? These are the mind games. These are the mind games that they play and he successfully can do. So now the next step for State is to figure out how to handle success, because their schedule next year is, after that Tennessee game, is super manageable. And there's no reason they shouldn't be in Charlotte next year for the ACC championship game.
Speaking of Charlotte, that gets us to UNC. Again, same situation. No Drake May.
I don't think anybody on the UNC side, though, expected them to win the football game with the players that they had.
Right.
They had. See, the thing about State was they really only had one guy opt out.
They had what?
Now
Wilson.
Now he was super important.
Well, it's funny. I was looking at the box score because I was in the mountains and I kind of paid attention to the NC State Kansas State game. Watched some of the highlights. I looked at the box score. The biggest thing that stuck out to me, and that's where that one player factors in. You know what stuck out to me? Turnovers.
Yep.
NC State was, I think, 13th in the country in turnover margin at plus 0.7. Okay, that's in the UNC win. They had 3 turnovers.
They played
one fumble.
They played a very specific way in that 5-game winning streak, and they basically did none of those things really until the second half defensively. And then they gave up 21 points in the first half. It was too much. So,
and turnover margin can be a very fleeting thing, but it's not lost on me that your key driver of a lot of those things was missing in that game.
That was the real reason that your brother and some State fans and others would be mad. Kansas State had 18 guys not playing, including their quarterback.
You called it. Not their quarterback. 18 guys not playing. They had like a new coordinator. You called it before we left. And it was like, still like, wait a minute. Why do you guys look like the organized ones and NC State doesn't?
Right.
So I get
that's why I think Carolina, when you don't have Drake May, and you have some of the issues that they've had. I mean,
the issue with,
and I don't think that final score was indicative for Carolina of the game itself.
Here's the issue with Carolina. If we're looking big picture, if we're workshopping things going forward, right? Where's this all going?
For the heels.
Yeah. Where is it all going? That's the problem that I think Carolina football fans have right now with Mac Brown. Where's this going, man? Because you had a couple cracks at it with Drake May, and it's almost like, look, I don't want to turn this into like banging on Mac Brown, but I do think that regardless of who your defensive coordinator is, this is just kind of who you are under Mac Brown. And Chris over at Dagon Box Scores put this together, and it's indicative of a Mac Brown UNC team and what it's going to be remembered for, unless they just shock the world next year. When they play in September and October, they are plus 185 in point differential from 2021 to 2023. But once they get into November and December over the last 3 years, they are minus 105 in point differential, 4-10 in the months of November and December. So as he puts it, and a lot of Carolina fans are also put it, and something I completely understand and why I asked, where is this all going? When Mac Brown, and you know this bothers me, it's bothered me all season, when Mac Brown dismissively says things like, well, 7 wins, 8 wins is pretty good for around here. No, that's not the expectation you set, number one, when you came back. Number two, if you were to tell most NC State and North Carolina fans, hey, man, you're going to have an 8-win season with a chance at 9. You're going to have a 9-win season with a chance at 10. I think most people go, okay, cool. I think most people go like that.
And then the quarterback, though.
Well,
I think that's where it gets to, right?
It's also in who you beat, like NC State, right?
Yep.
NC State seasons have been completely rewired based on how they've gotten to that record and who they've beaten to get to that record, which includes beating and embarrassing North Carolina. When North Carolina gets to 8 wins, it happens because they start out hot, people get all worked up, and then it just falls out from them. And it shows a lack of toughness from UNC, which again gets to Mac Brown. And I don't want to belabor the whole signing day thing where he decided that's the spot where he wanted to call out Dave Doran. But that's where I think Carolina football fans are right to look at what's going on with Mac Brown and go, what are we doing here, man? What's next year going to be about? What's the future of this program look like? Thanks for coming back and resetting things. Thanks for getting the hype train back with North Carolina. But we kind of know what you are right now, and that's not good enough for a lot of fans, and I don't blame them.
Yeah, from the game specifically, I did like the cut of Connor Harrell's jib.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he
was fine.
He missed some throws, but I thought like super athletic. I thought he moved around really nice. And you put that with Amarion Hampton next year, like a full package deal. They have a chance now, but what's that chance to be? It's probably, a 7-8 win team.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at their schedule next year, they somehow avoid all of the new teams, which is weird. They don't play Stanford, Cal, or SMU next year.
Yeah.
At all. That's weird to me. So they have a bit of a classic schedule. The game that's going to be interesting for me, and we've seen this before with Carolina, especially early in the season. You talk about how they like to build momentum.
Sure.
Keep an eye on this one. They play James Madison the third week of the year next year. Mm-hmm. Now, you might think, oh, James Madison, they're still a 1AA team or this or that. James Madison's pretty good. And this has big South Florida energy to me.
I got you.
The year where Bunning finally got fired.
Yeah.
Where they were like, okay, there's nobody here at the game. It's a noon game. The stadium's empty, and we're getting run out of the gym by a smaller, conference team.
Mm-hmm.
That has potential to be a game to circle and be worried about next year for them. But yeah, I mean, the way that they're constructed, they could have the same record next year. They could go 8-4 next year.
But again, it's who you beaten along the way.
You also don't have you don't have an NFL quarterback. You don't have a guy who everyone's going to have warm and fuzzy memories about either. So that's where we had a big discussion in the G4 about, like, was this year successful for NC State? And it's like, well, yeah, they won 9 games again. It's like, yeah, well, they do that all the time. And it's like, okay, well, maybe.
What's wrong with that if you're NC State?
But it's what you said about the wins and who they were over. And it also has to do with the expectations, right? Like, I don't think it's the right way to choose the ACC Coach of the Year because we do that all the time. Hey, I thought this team was going to stink. Now, you're better than I thought.
We thought you were going to suck.
But that is one way to look at a season and go down. This team
Yeah.
Just as Alabama was limited, this state team was pretty limited. So for them to beat Clemson and Carolina for the second time in 3 years,
beat Wake Forest too,
and to win at Wake, now it doesn't end the way you want it to end. But I would argue that's because, Peyton Wilson didn't play in that football game. He was so much a part of who they were.